Hey, another episode of Legal Tech, Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern and 6 p.m. left coast time, and actually 7 p.m. Idaho time, which I think Gary, you're from there, and then I know Tatiana, you're from there, right?
That's right.
Anyway, great to have you guys. My name is Ivan Raiklin. I am a recovering lawyer, diplomat, and Green Beret turned startup advisor and angel investor, and also host of 4 different shows on Blab. And the one we have tonight is called Legal Tech, and I got my co-host.
I'm Nick Rishwain. I am a recovering government employee. I work at a legal tech firm dealing with expert witnesses, and I have never had to practice law. But
Well, how did you get on this show, Nick, if you've never practiced law?
I work in the legal tech field, and I did go to law
okay.
And I did go to law, but I never practiced.
So we're both essentially 2 non-practicing attorneys, and I think Tatiana is the third now, right? Basically, interested in disrupting the legal profession.
Yeah, I still have a toe in the legal profession, but it looks like we're all trying to get out of it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. No, there's room for disruption. That's why I'm really glad that you came on the show. Obviously, You're the CEO of LeanLaw. For those of you that are just jumping in, Gary was introduced to me by Tatiana, and I don't want to steal the thunder. You want to go ahead and kick things off, introduce yourself, Gary, and also about LeanLaw.
Sure. My name's Gary Allen. I'm a 25-year practicing lawyer, so it takes me longer to learn than everybody else on the program, apparently. And I still practice law a little bit, but most of my time is now as CEO of LeanLaw. So LeanLaw helps law firms become lean. So we create lean practices for lawyers, or efficient practices. We do that through both mission critical software for things like timekeeping and billing and email management, as well as providing IT services that allow lawyers to start, learn to operate, and then maintain a lean practice. So that's the long and short of it.
All right.
That's the short of it, you mean?
That's the short of it, yeah.
I'm going to start off. We'll go ahead and kick it off to make this thing longer. My first question would be, what specific functions are you talking about in terms of making it leaner? Are you talking about, you mentioned IT, so can you go into a little bit more detail on the IT side of it?
So I think one thing we're unique about is that we have a very specific meaning of what we mean by a lean practice. A lot of people have talked about paperless offices and virtual offices for a long time.
For centuries.
Those are all, pardon?
For centuries, it seems like.
For centuries, yeah, exactly. And that's all fine. But to me, it's as I was practicing and seeing people trying to do that and adding new technology, it was just never hitting the bottom line. And so what we decided was we needed to make a bold statement about how you can actually save money by getting more efficient. And so a lean practice to us, we look at the overhead of a firm. And the overhead of an average typical traditional law firm is 35 to 55% of its revenue. So, you talk to people in other industries and they just choke when they hear those numbers, but that's normal for law firms. But by adopting lean practices, a law firm can get to where its overhead is 20% or less, if you can believe that. And, I've been thinking about this idea for years. And for a long time, I didn't really know what was possible. And actually, a couple of firms have split out of my own law firm and really adopted a very lean models and were able to achieve overhead of 15%, 18%, 12%. So they've shown that it can be done, and we want to bring that to the entire profession. When you look at, so that makes you take a hard look at overhead. And I think what you see out there, you see a lot of like Six Sigma consultants, agile consultants, That's way too complicated for most lawyers, from what we can see. I mean, nobody's going to sit through learning how to do Six Sigma Lean if you're in a 10-lawyer law firm. It's just, you're just never going to get anybody's attention. So we wanted to make this simple enough that it was achievable, and we think it is. I mean, and it really starts with your technology, that if you get the right technology foundation laid, and you create the right culture so that people will undertake the behavior change that's needed to become lean, then you can get really dramatically different results like those firms who have split out of my own law firm. So when we look at legal technology and law firm overhead, there's about 7 different pies that you need to look at there. If you break out overhead by workflow, which is what we do. And just to step back a minute, every study I've ever seen of law firm overhead has focused on professional staff and workspaces and things like that, instead of actually looking at what you're doing and the actual functions. So I don't think it's been very helpful to understand that. And firms
so the process management of it, right?
Right. It's much more. You don't have to go into process management like you do in Six Sigma. You're not building an automobile, but there are 7 basic processes that happen in law firms that make up the basic workflow. So there are things like document creation, document management, communication, and several others that are just core to what you do as lawyers. And you want to break those down and look at them and say, okay, what can I do to improve that? And it starts with cloud-based technology. So we're big cloud advocates in our company, and part of what's held law firms back is just that they've got this ancient server technology that they're using that is really hard to use and requires a lot of care and feeding and staff support to get things done. So, email is one example. In my firm, we've got
sorry. Somebody's feeling better.
In my firm, we've got, email servers and a whole, staff to support all of that. You don't need any of that anymore. You can stick all of that up into the cloud. You can use Google Apps for Work or Microsoft 365. It simplifies that process. So that's going to save you some money on, just the reduced cost of your technology. You also have, and I think more importantly, is you can get a smoother, easier workflow, particularly with Google, so that you don't do some of the things that lawyers do that you can't believe. Like for many years, I've known lawyers who make copies of their emails and stick them in a paper file. And that, that's kind of the opposite of lean. And you see that, and you just see workflow after workflow like that in a law firm. So my favorite one is timekeeping and billing. And that was kind of where we saw everybody hates to do that, right?
Right. It seems like you spend 10 hours to account for the 1 minute that you just did work on.
Yeah.
You certainly, you look at that and
Gary, I have to say, when Tatiana told us about LeanLaw last week on our blab, I got excited over this.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
like it is. I think this is the juicy stuff of your firm right now, and that's because I remember very vividly with the old timesheets because I was working for a lawyer who had been around for a long time, and I was a researcher. So I worked for him for many years. And writing down the 10th of the hour, and then you got to spend an hour or two going back and putting it all together. So tell me, I want to hear all about this. What is under your main page? Bill more time / billing costs.
Oh yeah, okay. So let's go back to the start with this and talk about the traditional way that lawyers keep time. So you remember those little time slips. And when we were pitching this to our local Angel Alliance, I actually brought in one of these old carbon copy timesheets that people use, and you write down your time, and then you peel off the sheet, and that leaves a carbon copy for who knows what reason. And then you give that to your secretary along with a pile of about 50 of these things, and then she types them into the system, and then you know that goes into some billing computer somewhere, and then 2 weeks later somebody pops out a stack of draft invoices that you have to review, and you look at them by hand, and you write on every one by hand, and then you send that back to your billing group, and maybe a week later they get around to inputting those changes, printing out a new invoice, and then sticking it in an envelope and sending it to your client. So from the time the billing period ended, the month ended, you're probably close to 30 days at that point. And all right, so now your client gets the bill, they open the envelope, they stick it in their pile of bills, and then 30 to 60 days later, you get paid. So you've got a 90-day process.
Yep.
And, you know, that's very expensive by itself. And then you've got all of the staff that was required to do that. And I don't think lawyers have any appreciation of just how expensive that is. A traditional law firm. We interviewed our accounting manager in my firm, along with my lead software developer, to sort of figure out just how much time does this take. And in a 35 lawyer law firm, it was at least 4 FTEs to go through this billing process. So, you know, you've got a secretary who's got to decipher your handwriting, type in all of that time. You've got billing clerks who are carrying all this back and forth and doing other deciphering and stuffing envelopes. It's typically 10 to 15% of a law firm's overhead. And that average overhead is about $160,000 a year. So we're talking to $15,000 to $25,000 a year per lawyer just to get your bills out. Now that's crazy.
Crazy.
And you know, stuff you don't even want to do.
Right. And it's the worst part of practicing law. You got to remember
how much of
everything
it you don't remember. You know, it just slips through your mind at the end of the day or week.
Yeah, and we know plenty of people who don't bill their time until the end of the month. So how they keep track of what they did at that time is just almost impossible.
Yeah, you know, Gary, and it reminded me of a couple of issues that you covered there. One was, I remember getting to the end of the day and remembering that I worked on a file, and thinking back and thinking to myself, well, I didn't really spend much time. I'm not going to write it down. So that's time lost.
Right.
The other thing that is you sort of covered in a more general area, that when you're an associate or a research associate or a law clerk or something, you're billing. I think they were billing me out at $150 an hour. Now this was 15 years ago.
You are dating yourself.
I am dating myself. But so assuming once I finished all my billing, then it had to go to one of the partners to review to make sure that I was. So if he's billing at $500 an hour, and now he's spending an hour reviewing my work, there's another billable time lost.
No, it's amazing. The whole the studies are that lawyers lose 10 to 25% of their time just because they don't write it down. So you've got, you know, massive costs built into just the billing part of a law firm. Right. Now, most firms now have some sort of electronic tool to assist that. So at least theoretically, you're going to input your time originally into an electronic tool. However, in my firm, the tool is so bad that 50% of the lawyers don't use it. and they either handwrite their time or they put it in a spreadsheet and give it to their secretary. So you've got all of that. We have nothing to help with this time capture problem that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and really, unless you have it, there's some super expensive tools that purport to deal with that, to give you a electronic footprint of what you've done, but nothing that's available to small law firms like our target market.
So can you tell us then how you guys address that, or maybe you were moving into that and I cut you off?
That's where I'm headed. So,
okay.
So let's talk about well, let me step back for just a second and talk about our philosophy about software. We believe that when there's a good generic tool out there, we should take advantage of the strengths and power of that tool. We're never going to write better email than Gmail or Outlook. Okay. We're not going to make a better calendar. And we think that, for example, with QuickBooks Online, they have some really powerful features for invoicing, email invoicing and collection that are really great and are something we're never going to be able to beat. So we wanted to take advantage of that. But the place where QuickBooks and every other tool really falls down is on the timekeeping to invoicing workflow. So that's where we focused. And we said a couple of things. One is, how are we going to help lawyers remember what they did? And so I remembered back to when I started practicing law, and you had what you call a day timer. Do you remember those? That looks like a calendar. So it's a calendar style timesheet, and you put your time in certain slots in there. And I really liked that because it helped me remember what I'd done. Right. And so, okay, there's a hole here between 2 and 3 o'clock. Let me think about what I'd done. And that helped me to find time in there.
Right.
So we created a timesheet like that. We also have a more traditional, we have a desktop tracker, which allows you to just pop in time to different matters. And we have which is now an alpha phase mobile application. So to make it really easy to just put in a time entry and it plugs it into that timesheet. But then, so the calendar timesheet is the master. And then right next to it, we put this thing we call a scratch pad or the lean pad. And that's where you collect your electronic footprint of your day. So your emails that you've attached to a matter, we have a really slick tool that allows you to input the client and matter with 2 clicks. And then that will send it to the right folder for email. It sends the attachments to your document management tool, and it sends the electronic footprint over by your timesheet. So now I've got a list of emails that I looked at during the day that I can just drag and drop onto the timesheet to go, oh yeah, I worked on this, documents as well, and calendar appointments are the other thing that we track at this point.
Oh, nice.
So all of those things can be easily pulled onto the timesheet as time entries.
Now, this is your own proprietary software that you've built, is that correct? Or is that using a multitude of different tools kind of integrated amongst themselves?
Well, what I just described is all our software.
Okay.
But it's all web-based, cloud-based software, and it integrates very tightly with other software. Like the email tool that I was explaining sits right on top of your Google Apps for Work, right in your Gmail account. So you don't have to leave Gmail to use that. And we have the same thing in Outlook.
MixMax was one of the tools that was mentioned on your website.
Yes, we really like MixMax. And what we do is a lot like MixMax.
Okay.
And for people who aren't familiar with that, MixMax is a overlay over Gmail, which does certain functions like helps you to calendar appointments by putting in availability into an email, and calendar group appointments, and create email templates. It augments the features of Gmail. And we do the same thing by augmenting the client matter organization within Gmail. So you've got that timesheet that now is really that is very robust in terms of the information it brings to the table for you. We're working on phone records. That's the next thing we want to bring to that Scratchpad, by the way.
Okay.
And then, so you can take that information, and then there's just another tab that you push when you're ready to invoice, and you can review all of your draft invoices on that page, and just with one click send them over to QuickBooks. So that eliminates that. We've eliminated the first step of hand entry of the time.
Yes.
We've mitigated the problem of forgetting what you're doing. And then we've taken away the manual invoice review step. Then we push directly into a QuickBooks invoice from there. And now we get to take advantage of the good parts of QuickBooks, which is the email invoicing. So you don't have to have anybody licking envelopes anymore, as long as your clients are willing to use email for that, and that's greater acceptance of that. And then they have really powerful automatic payment features through the Intuit payment network for ACH and credit card transactions.
Gary, real quick, I have to interject. When you mentioned the whole licking of envelopes, have you heard of the tool or the service called Earth Class Mail? It's basically a cloud-based mail service, and I use that. Okay, here's what it is. You basically purchase a P.O. box or a physical address, because a lot of times in most states, or at least in New York where I'm an attorney, in order to have a business, and you have to have a physical location where you can be served, right? So rather than having an office, you still work in your home office anywhere on the planet. You can create a physical address through Earth Class Mail, and all it does is it takes you receive your email there, and then they scan it in and put it up into the cloud, and then you get an email alert. So that way you don't even have to have a physical address, and it's essentially, what is it? I think the lowest plan is $50 a month.
Nice.
So I've had that for, I'd say, 5 or 6 years.
Nice. There's some other services like that we really like. Like, do you guys know about Intelligent Office?
I've heard of it, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's a virtual office provider, and they will do things like they provide somebody to answer your phone, and they can calendar appointments for you and so on. And then, like Ruby Receptionist is another reception product, but Intelligent Office also creates an office suite where you can rent a conference room and office by the hour. And so your office costs can go down from thousands of dollars a month to hundreds of dollars a month using something like that.
Okay. So that would be that kind of thing could really go in conjunction with what you're doing to make a really lean office.
Well, exactly. And that's why we offer the IT services as well. It's really a consulting and strategic function to say, okay, how are we going to get you down to that 20% level?
Okay.
And it's a combination of technology and then really smart processes. Could be outsourcing that you use, for certain of your functions. So,
and when I was reading when I was reading about you guys today, it sounded like you have some IT staff that an attorney can pick up and call for assistance in certain issues. Is that right? Did I misunderstand that? Okay.
Right. So we have a 100% remote IT services.
Okay.
And it's not a break fix type service. That's what you're used to calling IT guys for. Now we get plenty of calls like that, but it's really much more strategic.
Okay.
So we use we use remote technology so we can access the clients. My partner's a guy named Jonathan Fishman, who's been providing IT services for a long time and kind of was one of the pioneers of this remote model.
Okay.
And so he we'll get on the phone with people, and so we do a consultation to start with the law firm, unless they're just something's totally on fire. It starts with saying, okay, here's where you are. You've got, some horrible messy server in your closet that is, they're charging you $800 a month to support this thing. And you can't work outside of the office because it's got some awful VPN connection. And so we're going to get you on a path to replace that. You're going to take your email off of there. We're going to stick it in the cloud. We're going to take your documents off of there and stick them in the cloud in something like box.com or NetDocuments or maybe Dropbox or Google Drive if you're comfortable with those. And at that point, and we've been through that process now with several law firms. And it's like, that's just the start. Because once you get stable like that and you go, wow, I love having Gmail and Google Apps because now I can access my documents and email wherever I go. And, that's a big change for a lot of attorneys, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And then they go, so what can I do next? And that's when we go, well, you might consider, an intelligent office solution. We had an attorney going, why do I have to pay somebody to be sitting, at the front desk filing their nails all day? And, don't want to put anybody out of a job, but that's just not productive compared to using an intelligent office or a Ruby receptionist. Right. And so that person saved like $1,500 a month just doing that.
Hey Gary,
and then the process continues. Yeah.
I see here in the chat we've had a couple questions roll through. I didn't want to miss any. I think we may have addressed some. I think Tatiana mentioned one was what collaboration tools do the law firms of today use?
What do you mean by collaboration?
I think that probably refers to maybe the communication aspect. You said that there were 7 areas where
right,
be more efficient. I think that may be referring to the communications piece.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we break communications down into 3 areas. One of them is email. And so the choice in email is either Google or Microsoft. And that sounds obvious, and if some people use Apple Mail, a few. But a lot of these practice management tools that lawyers use include email functions, but we don't see anybody really adopting them. So part of this is just to say, don't bother with trying to use Clio email or MyCase email. Stick with the big guys. The second thing is phone. This is, lawyers tend to think they need fancy desktop phones for their offices, and they need, a PBX, and they need somebody answering the phone. We started out and we did some direct phone marketing, and I did it myself so that I would know what we had to go through. And almost every law firm you call, you have to go through 2 layers of reception and secretaries before you even have a chance of talking to an attorney. So that's incredibly expensive and really not necessary in any way as a gatekeeper function. You can get by with a lot less than that. So you've got, what sort of phone system do you use? And we start by saying, is your mobile phone enough? Can you augment that with a nice headset so that the sound quality is better? And then just kind of go up there from there and say, what's the cost versus value proposition for anything above that? And you might be able to get by with a nice app like phonebooth.com that give you a VoIP system. Maybe you want to add a receptionist capability there with something like Line 2. And then, okay, you really need a big boy desktop phone system. Just be aware you're going to pay a lot for that, and be sensitive to the cost versus value proposition. The third part of communication is that sort of reception hospitality function that lawyers go through. And that's where we say, could you use something like Intelligent Office, or Opus is another one that's available in some markets and has been pretty highly reviewed. So you don't need to have somebody sitting there all day, because that's crazy expensive.
Yeah. And I think Tatiana you wanted to comment, Tatiana. I didn't mean to cut you off. I do have a question for you, but we also want to maybe rotate somebody from a guest in. But Tatiana wanted to tell us about the interface.
Yeah, so I'm actually an investor in LeanLaw, and I just wanted to tell everybody that's watching that it's hard to really understand how robust the software is without seeing kind of the live demo, and that was an issue with a lot of the investors that when we were doing due diligence on the company, we were very hesitant unless we got to the point where we could see the live demo. And I encourage everybody to try it out if there's an option to try out LeanLaw, because once you see it, I think it's so slick. And the way that Gary was explaining this kind of the scratch pad, this digital scratch pad, it just captures everything, almost everything you do. And at the end of the day, it makes it like so easy to drag and drop entries from this digital scratch pad onto your calendar. And of course, you can select billable or non-billable. It creates kind of the default description, so you don't even have to write stuff down of what you did unless you want to change the default a little bit. And then it automatically sends it to QuickBooks, and just seeing how it works is so powerful. So I highly encourage everybody to check it out because it just, talking about it doesn't give it justice. So that's kind of what I wanted to jump in and say, and I'm happy to jump off and let somebody else jump in and ask questions.
Let me
Thank you, Tatiana.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tatiana. And I don't know if I know Tamsin's in here. I don't know if she'll have a second to pop in and say hi. She's an attorney as well. Ivan must be refreshing. Tamsin, are you free to come in and take a seat? You have any questions here for Gary?
Actually, there were two questions that were also out there. So what's a good solution when handling copies of docs sent to clients? Is there a better way, like having them stored online and allowing clients to access those docs behind a password protected wall? I think you answered that with the cloud-based service that you were discussing.
Yeah, so the answer is yes. So you have, a lot of attorneys have gotten used to emailing documents to clients, and for sensitive information, that's really not a very good practice, because that email may not be very secure, either in transit or at rest. So it's a good idea to use a strong tool or some sort of portal in which a client has to sign in order to get it. And there are different levels of security you can use. You can use a true portal where somebody just gets a way into a portal, into a website, or you can use something like box.com, which we think is, kind of the best small business and small law firm cloud-based tool that allows you to, give your client a link. It's a little better than Dropbox and Google Drive and OneDrive at this point, because it was designed for business applications and makes the sharing a little clearer than those other applications which started as consumer grade. So yes, there are definitely ways to do that, and it's just a matter of assessing how sensitive is the information, because there's always a trade-off between how the ease of use and the security.
Got it.
You can make things so secure that no lawyer can actually access them, or client.
Right. And then we have another one here by Adam Warner, was asking, any recommendations for CPAs that are familiar with digital software sales? I'm not sure if that's within your scope of expertise.
CPAs like that are like SAS companies. Is that what he's talking about?
Tatiana said sidekick by HubSpot.
So we ran into so this sort of sounds like a business end question. We talked to a virtual CFO firm in Salt Lake City when we were starting our business, and they had a whole bunch of experience with SaaS companies. And I'm struggling to remember their name right now, but it's like virtual CFO or something like that. And they were very knowledgeable, but they were a lot more than we needed at that point. They wanted to have a pretty expensive contract in place. And being a lean startup, we said, well, wait a minute, what do we really need from a financial planning standpoint? And I seemed to be getting into some things that were more than we really needed. So, we just found a local virtual CFO firm to help us. But if you really need some expertise, I think in any major city, there's going to be, or at least any major tech hub, there's going to be virtual CFO firms that can help you out. Okay. And they will have CPAs.
And then we have a question here from AJ. He said, "Is there a better system than Boomerang for Gmail?" And I think Tatiana mentioned Sidekick by HubSpot. But I didn't know if you have any answers for him there, Gary.
So what function are we trying to fill with Boomerang?
So Boomerang allows you to delay right. It sends you a reminder to send an email out essentially, or delay your email. You'll type it up, and then queue it up into your queue and whenever you want to send it. I'm familiar with Boomerang. Sidekick, I use Boomerang every once in a while. Sidekick I'm familiar with, but I have not used it. I've heard of it.
Right.
But I haven't used it.
I have not used Boomerang. This is what I use MixMax for.
Yeah, and MixMax, to be honest, it seems to be much more robust. I just started using it probably a couple weeks ago, and just some of the functionality, it incorporates some of the templates that there's an integration within Gmail, a fairly new one within their tools, but MixMax does a much better job, I think.
Yeah, MixMax was just, I don't know how, someplace where apps just kind of reach that awesome stage where you can use them without really thinking about them. And I feel like MixMax is like that for the things that I use it for. So it's got a really cool tool where you can just stick your availability into an email and send it to somebody. It's got good tools for email templates and deferring sending and things like that, it's not like you need to look at the manual to figure them out. So I really like that. I haven't tried Boomerang, and it may be just as good. But I've been really happy with MixMax.
I think it is more powerful. MixMax is, yeah.
Oh, interesting. I have a question on, I love the fact that you have back to LeanLaw on the billing straight to the integration with QuickBooks and then the ACH payment or the credit card payment. Do you have any idea, have clients been taking great deal of advantage of that ACH or credit card payment? Have any of your customers told you, given you any indication that that's been something that clients are using?
Yeah, well, we hear, people aren't used to that. I mean, we're really on the front edge of that. I think that, it's compelling in the longer term, or even, it's compelling right now. If you're willing to actually go out and talk to your clients about it, like LeanLaw gets most of our payments through ACH. And so you just have to be willing to have that conversation and get it done, because it's not something, you might have some clients who are uncomfortable, but you should be able to get most of them to sign up for that. And it saves everybody trouble.
Yeah.
It's just easier on both ends.
Yeah. Yeah. We use it in my day job, the ACH and credit card payments through into it. And we still have some folks who have trouble wanting to do the ACH. So I just wondered how you guys had luck with legal clients paying through that.
Yeah, I think the best example I've got is Jonathan Fishman's business that he had before called Remo Support, which was IT, and he had 95% of his clients paying through ACH.
Fantastic. That's
so
beautiful.
It's just a matter of setting up the expectation and workflow with your client, and it's a mutual benefit, so it really shouldn't be an issue for most people. Now, we talked to law firms who are, a lot of their have older clients, like their state and probate lawyers, and that's going to be a slower adoption in that world, of course,
because they prefer Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. I have to think about my mom, though. She's 91 years old and she struggles so much with anything on the computer. But so, if she's your client, you're not getting paid through ACH.
But her kids or the
grandkids
who do get involved later on will likely take advantage of that.
Exactly.
Excellent. And I had one more question about that billing, about your billing issue. Of course, I was excited about this because I have the nightmares from previous experience. And you talked about it cutting back that person who has to, do all the input. And does this free up the attorney at all to do more personal one-on-one client intake in certain? Does being lean allow them to do the intake with the cases, or does that allow them to hire somebody who can do the initial intake? How have you seen that affect it?
Well, that's really interesting, and firms take different approaches to this. The ones that we've seen that just went out and said, our goal is to have the lowest overhead we can have. The lawyers just say, look, I'm going to do all that intake myself. And it's, if you've got a litigation practice where your average matter value is $25,000 or so, that's not a big deal.
Right.
If you've got a states and trust practice where your average client matter is $500 or $1,000, that's a little harder on your bottom line. You've got to, make a efficiency choice there about, is it smarter for me to spend, to not have that staff person or not? I mean, it's a matter of how you want to and can spend your time. If you're starting that practice, maybe you're better off doing it yourself.
Right.
Because you've got time. But once you're totally booked, maybe that does make sense to have somebody help you. Now, you want to have efficient intake tools so that whoever's doing it can do it as easily and efficiently as possible. And, there are systems where clients, where they have a do-it-yourself intake, where the client fills out the forms themselves online. So there are other solutions,
right?
If you don't need the sort of one-on-one interaction with the client.
Okay. But being lean would probably overall help you in your ability to help your client. If you have more time to dedicate to the client because you're spending less time. Is that the overall general idea of what you're doing here? Spending more time helping the client and practicing law than doing the management?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And it just, you go through these workflows and it really blows you away how inefficient these processes are. And there's a bunch of things going on there. I mean, some of it is that lawyers just don't want to get their hands dirty with what they consider to be tasks that are beneath them. Mm-hmm. So we start out, every time we do a webinar, we say, okay, part of what we've got to do here is change your mindset so that you are prepared to pump your own gas compared to the old full service that we had 50 years ago, or you have now in New Jersey and Oregon.
Exactly
right.
And I don't think, that's mostly lawyers over 50 who probably feel like it's beneath me to be typing on the computer or, doing some of these other tasks. And I think there's some skepticism among older lawyers that you're just going to replace secretarial time with my time without any efficiency gain.
Right.
And that's not what we're after. I mean, you've already spending the time writing your time down on the piece of paper or dictating it or whatever. You're just going to spend that time more efficiently by getting things directly into the tool.
Right.
So I wanted to mention one thing we're really excited about is our new mobile app. And so we have a mobile app that allows you to do time entries.
iOS?
One of the cool, not iOS yet, sorry.
Android?
Just Android
let me
at
get
this
my
point.
Android.
And it's an alpha. No, it's alpha, so we haven't released it yet.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. But here's what I'm really excited about with it is that without any development on our part, because of the voice recognition you've already got built into the phone, you can dictate your time entries. So those people who don't want to type or don't like to type, they don't have to. So, it's kind of like your phone becomes your dictaphone.
Right.
With this app and a whole bunch of other things. I mean, you can do that with Google Docs, and probably, I think you could do it with the Word app as well. And I think there's some real power in that.
Very cool.
All right, so I got a question. I just posted it up there.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask, just based on what you're working on, are you integrating or seeing any integration by law firms of any of those tools? Slack, Basecamp, Podio, Voxer, and there's a few other ones that are out there.
Right.
That I won't mention.
Right. So LeanLaw uses Slack a lot. So we've got a whole bunch of Slack channels, and it's become a lot of our day-to-day communication. I really like it. I think if you did a poll among law firms about what Slack was, you'd probably have about 1% name recognition.
And that's the most popular
so I don't think,
one.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think law firms have any idea what these tools are or what they can do. Now, but we were just talking about this week is introducing something like Slack going to be part of a lean practice for some law firms? And I think that's interesting. I mean, again, you just have law firms have no clue how to use cloud-based apps.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it works for any team. If you have a team of lawyers working on any particular project, you want to have some sort of efficient communications flow. And it's a lot easier to do it in groupings of, say, for example, projects versus let me go into my email and see the 70 projects that I'm working on in no order, rhyme, or reason. It's just ridiculous.
No, it's absolutely right. And I was until a few months ago, I was a dinosaur when it came to this kind of thing too. And now you can really see the power of something like this. It's changed the way the software company is communicated a lot, and I think it makes a whole bunch of sense for law firms. So it'll be, most firms are just at such a basic level. You go in and you see this scary server in the closet. The email's probably on a server. They have very little ability to operate outside of the office. It's just it's all 10 or 15 years old. And so, we're going to have a lot of work in the next couple of years, just kind of raising the bar as far as that goes and getting the basic stuff integrated. And then we can start looking at.
Do you think that's the case
like
with law firms, I guess, from medium to small, or is that also large law firms? I mean, talking about your White and Cases, your Bakers, I mean, you find
that's interesting. I mean, I think they probably have a little better communication ability and tools, but they're paying such ridiculous amounts of money for it that they're anything but lean.
Yeah.
Yes, they're paying for tools that were created for them that now they can literally use for free by integrating Slack or paying a nominal fee a month.
Right.
And they're paying monthly for those things. Huge sums.
I mean, we study overhead levels for small firms primarily. Some of the numbers we hear for large firms just blow your mind.
Yeah.
A Boise-based or a Boise office of a regional law firm with overhead of $300,000 a month per lawyer, or $300,000 a year per lawyer. So $25,000 a month. Ooh. So just to cover the nut.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, how painful is that?
That's painful. It's painful to hear.
Business
I'm not even
right?
What's that?
No, you're addressing a pain point, so business is starting to boom, right?
We are on a fast growth curve right now, and our services business kind of has taken off first, and our software is just starting to ramp. And it was pretty basic when the product that Tatiana saw was pretty rudimentary, and now we've had 6 months of intensive development. I was so excited to see it today. It's really pretty. The billing product is really slick end to end. And we can't wait to get into all the other pain points that lawyers have. I mean, document management is a great opportunity where you've really only, you've got these consumer grade tools like Google Drive and so on, which are going to get better. But you've got something like Box.com, which I think is a great base grade business product, but it's so bare bones that it's just dying for somebody to write into their document management UI into their API. Mm-hmm. And we're really excited about getting into that. And that also allows us to head into lateral markets for other professionals who don't have any better tools than lawyers do.
Yeah, very cool. I dig it. I like it, Gary. I do.
Oh, thanks, Nick.
Not that what I say has much bearing on what you're doing, but I do. I really like what you guys are doing. This has been my favorite of our legal tech so far.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Now, based on what you just said, also Gary we had a guest. I was probably a couple months ago now, called Legal Robot, and they're working on
cool.
the making it more efficient to sift through all your legal documents.
There are so many cool apps that are out there in the legal space now. I mean, we don't pretend to be the end all and be all of this. I mean, we just want to help attorneys navigate through this period of really intense change that we're going through right now. And, I think we really tried to start this from a standpoint of humility to say, we're never going to write all the software for lawyers, and we need to appreciate the best of what other people do, and to be honest about our strengths and weaknesses and other people's as well. But it blows me away how many cool things there are out there that we can help lawyers integrate into their practices. Yeah. And we're just getting started on that. So that's very exciting.
Now, you mentioned I only have one other question. I don't want to keep you all night, but your firm, the firm that you still are somewhat active in, they have not incorporated LeanLaw yet. Is that because they've got a contract with their already existing? Have you talked into it?
Yeah. There are a lot of conversations going on in my firm. Okay. My firm is 35 lawyers.
Okay.
So it's out of our target market, which is 10 or less.
Okay.
So in terms of adopting our software, we'd have to do some upgrades on QuickBooks is what it amounts to, because it doesn't have the reporting capabilities that we need for a bigger firm. But we think we'll get to that. Okay. In terms of the overall lean discussion in my firm, it just takes longer with the bigger firm, and you've got an age span from 25 to 65, and it's just a complex discussion. Right. But we're bringing in our new management team, who's in their 40s, starts transitioning this year, and I'm very hopeful that they will move the things forward.
That they'll convince the councils that it's time to make a change.
Need to put down the quill pens.
Right. Excellent. Ivan, it looks like you had one more question.
Yeah, I had one more. Is basically the preponderance of your revenue. Yeah. Is it coming from which side of the business?
At this point, it's consulting.
Okay.
But we expect that will flip within the next 2 years. Yeah. So we're just at the very beginning of a spark of traction for the software.
Okay.
And, the consulting was several months ahead of that. We really opened our doors as a real business in July of 2015. and have just been running hard since then to get everything set up. So, but we think the software is going to be very successful in the longer term.
Nice.
Cool.
And we think of ourselves as a software company.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. So that's your vision, is the software, basically.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But you know, I don't think that you get the transformation we want in the legal industry without both.
Right.
Because lawyers aren't the kind who are just going to go out and pick up an app and start using it. They need somebody to help them.
Yeah, that's right. Because they usually don't want to stop the time billing to do something else.
So, Tatiana, do you have any closing arguments before we finish this up?
Sorry about that.
Oh, I didn't make her a co-host.
Not significantly. Again, just want to thank Gary for jumping in and doing the show with us and telling more people about LeanLaw. If I was in practice right now, I would be using LeanLaw. Even though Gary said it's been a while, 6 months or more since I've seen the prior version, I guess. I was so impressed with the prior version. So by now, 6 months later, it must be just so much better. So I'm very happy personally to be an investor in LeanLaw and excited to hear about the growth. And I know that small and medium legal business is a hard place to break with technology. So kudos to anybody who is trying to get into that market.
Yeah. Yeah, Gary,
Thanks, Tatiana.
Thank you very much for coming, and I really appreciate it. Very, very cool.
Sure. Oh, thanks so much, Nick and Ivan and Tatiana. It's a real pleasure to talk with you guys tonight, and be happy to. I'll definitely talk your show up. I think this was a lot of fun and useful. So we'll watch your progress with interest. So that's great.
Yes, two things. Tatiana, thank you for the intro. You're just killing it with the intros. I love it. And yes, Gary, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Somewhat short notice because I wasn't using my MixMax and maximizing my efficiency within my own email structure. I'm getting it down to where I'm getting more control over it. So that's on me. But again, thanks on a short notice coming on today. Appreciate it. And I'm going to check out even more further. I might even subscribe, I think, to see what you guys are specifically doing so that I can evangelize it further.
Yeah.
Cool. Happy to set you up.
All right. 1 hour in. Perfect.
Cool. That's it.
All right.
Perfect
1 hour in.
video.
We finished up our Legal Tech show Thursday nights. Tune in next week. Hopefully in the future, I'm going to know in advance. Actually, we do know in advance who's coming up next. Don't we, Tatiana?
Yeah, I think we do on this one.
I hope so.
I do, but I'd have to look at my email. So we'll add that on later. No, we have
terrific.
Thanks
so
very
we'll have
much.
another.
I'm Nick Rishwain.
I'm Ivan Raiklin. And
Tatiana Gray here. And
Gary Allen.
hey, thanks, Gary. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everybody.